Hey, what's up, you guys? My name is Red, and thank you so much for listening to the very first episode of the Mestizo podcast. Now, just a little bit of groundwork. The first couple of episodes are going to be sort of my story. Now, it isn't to say that I'm going to start with my story because I'm the host or because mine is the best or whatever. The reason is because I need to set the groundwork, the foundation for what's to come. Whether I talk about a specific topic or just sort of talk about different stories. Now, the purpose of this podcast is to inform and educate through stories, through different perspectives of people who have, for whatever circumstance, been forced or willingly come back to Mexico. What I want to do with the podcast is really debunk and sort of deconstruct a lot of the myths, a lot of the misunderstandings that happen when talking about Mexico. Sort of give a different perspective that's not so grim of what it's actually like to live in Mexico after you lived in the US. For a lot of dreamers, a lot of different people who, are just terrified of coming to live in Mexico, thinking that once they get to Mexico, it's game over. Which is not, and I kind of had to learn that the hard way. So without further ado, let's get started with episode 1. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Subconsciously, he's looking for acceptance and help with his problems.
Alright, and welcome to the very first episode of the Mestizo podcast. My name is Rodrigo, and I am your host. Now, on the very first episode, I just sort of want to get introductions out of the way, just a little bit of information of who I am, what I do, and why I'm starting the podcast. So, first of all, who I am, a little bit of backstory. So, my name is Rodrigo, as I mentioned before. I am the eldest son of an immigrant couple. They were an immigrant couple, because now they're not, because now we're back in Mexico. But my life in California, which was most of my life from the age of 3 to the age of 24, was all lived in California. Kindergarten, middle school, high school, even a little bit of college. Everything about my upbringing is American or Californian, whatever you prefer. And just recently, and by recently I mean like 2 years ago, I decided to willingly leave America, leave the United States, and come live in Mexico. Start a brand new aspect of my life, and it was kind of scary. There was a lot of unknown factors that sort of made me question if this was a really good decision. Spoilers, it was. It was a very good decision. I don't regret it. But there was a lot of things that did happen, a lot of information that wasn't very well presented or wasn't even in existence at all, which was very troubling for me because when I was starting to research, trying to plan my relocation, my plan to move to Mexico, a lot of information that I was looking for that I couldn't really find, which was troubling to say the least. There's a lot of stuff that I was looking for as far as, how to get a license, what to do if I already have a driver's license, but I just sort of want to get a new one here in Mexico. What about the laws? What about the government? What about the political parties? What do they stand for? What do they do? How to get a job? What are their main websites that you look for or that you have to look for a job? How do people sort of navigate social classes? What about driving etiquette? Sort of cultures and mannerisms that aren't really addressed back stateside. Now, why have I decided to start this podcast? The main reason is to debunk a lot of things and show a different perspective through stories. Not only my stories, but other people's stories on how Mexico is not as bad as you might think, or not as bad as the media portrays it to be. Yes, Mexico has a lot of problems, but also offers a lot of opportunities that most people, if not all, including myself, overlook. There are huge opportunities for those that are willing to work. And please, I cannot emphasize this enough. For those that are willing to work, just like anywhere else. There is a lot of poverty. There is a lot of misfortune that does happen. But if you are a hard worker, you can overcome most, if not all, of your obstacles. I also sort of want to address and dedicate this podcast to all the different dreamers that are in fear or that are under this pressure of what happens if I get deported? What happens if I'm forced to go back home? What if I'm forced to face a new reality because someone in a higher power decided that they don't want me there? Which was sort of my idea, sort of my fear that I had of, being kicked out, being deported. And I want to talk to you and give you these different perspectives and information of sort of what happens in different aspects. What happens, what sort of help is there for you? How can you rebuild your life? What kind of opportunities can be given to you if you are seen in the situation where you have to go back or you have to move back to Mexico? So that's all. That's basically sort of introduction on who I am, what I'm doing, and why I'm doing this. So that's it, guys. Can't wait. Hopefully you guys stick around for episode 2. Sort of going to be talking about DACA and what's that all about, how did I obtain it, and what happened when I left it. All right, so I'll see you around. Bye.